Uh, so yeah, this is great. Thank you so much for doing this. Um,
Thank you for having us.
no,
We're
I, I've
excited.
seen some.
Very excited about the message you sent the other day, the email with the different topics you want to talk about. And so on. Very interesting.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Really.
I think it's super important nowadays. And yeah, just an important topic to discuss for men, really, that probably doesn't get discussed enough. Um,
Yeah.
you just have to look at the stats in regards to like male suicide and stuff like that, and it's yeah, it's a real problem that guys face. So I really appreciate you taking your time to talk to me about it.
Of
And
course.
super interesting that there's like a philosophy kind of aspect that is super popular now in terms of like social media. You see a lot of Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, all these quotes that you see online,
Yeah.
Stoicism and how that kind of like um, relates to men's mental health a little bit as well. I think like some
Yeah.
men probably find a bit of solace in reading that stuff and using it as inspiration or motivation to be the best versions of themselves. Um,
Hmm.
but then also like psychology is like super popular now in the mainstream, well, in regards to like relationships and stuff like that, attachment theory, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It's just yeah, I think it's out there, but it isn't really fixing the issue that men are facing. Like it's not doing. I don't think it's doing. It's popular, but I don't think it's doing anything really in regards to.
No, I think the issue that men are facing and other parts of the population are facing in general, these issues are too big to be
Mm,
fixed with certain, however interesting and actually helpful methods. But many of these um, problems that, for example, men face, they are very, very prevalent in our entire culture, right? So it's not something that has a quick fix, even though certain interesting, for example, types of psychology or for that matter philosophy and so on can actually help. They just cannot do it alone.
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, so true. And it's a very complex issue. So it's not a. I don't think there is a quick fix.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to do and what my message will be is like to focus on maybe how like mental health and how we can do things in our day-to-day lives might be simple things or habits and stuff that can cultivate a good sense of mental health. So I guess I'll start with how do I pronounce this? Is it Shang or Shung?
I'm used to both. So in
Okay.
Kurdish, where I'm originally from, it's
Oh,
Shang.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. And
But
you're
I'm
a
used
psych.
to all kinds of pronunciations, so that's okay.
Okay. So sorry, what is it? Shang or Shung? What do I say?
Shang.
Shung.
It's Shang.
Shung.
That's it.
Okay.
Shang.
Yeah.
Shung.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're a psychologist.
I am a psychologist.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So if I start with you and I ask you, if you think about physical health and like being healthy physically, it's kind of
Yeah.
pretty easily defined in terms of there's metrics. You can go to the doctor, they can take your bloods, they can do all sorts of stuff, tell you what's
Right.
wrong. And then
Yeah.
also in cultivating good physical health, you know that you eat a good balanced diet, exercise. There's like a heap of stuff you can do to maintain good physical health.
Right.
Um,
Mm.
I guess the question for you would be, how would you define like a good state of mental health?
I actually thought about this. I thought you might ask that. So I think it comes down to being able to control your mind.
Mm,
And what I mean by that is not to be able to control the type of thought that come up, because that's just part of being human. Having negative thoughts, having all kinds of thoughts that we don't like. And it's also not about necessarily controlling how we feel, because our feelings fluctuate. But controlling your mind is learning how you deal with the stuff that happens in here and rediscovering that this is something that's within your control. So in my clinic, I see a lot of clients, and I would say a lot of different types of clients. And I would say 95% of those who come to see me, their problems can be explained or reduced to how much time they spend overthinking.
Mm.
So they have this strained relationship with their thoughts. They take their thoughts very, very seriously. They see them as facts. So when a negative thought comes up, whether it's about an actual problem that's happening in their lives or whether it's about a potential problem that could happen in the future, when a thought like that comes up, most people engage with those thoughts as if they are important. And the way they do that, the way they treat that thought as important, is by starting to worrying about the thought. So asking more what if questions to these type of thoughts. What if she doesn't like me? What if I don't succeed? What if I can't make it financially? All those type of thoughts pop up, and it's normal. But the ways people deal with those thoughts is through worrying, which is just dwelling on those thoughts with more questions, with more thinking. And they also ruminate. I think I talk a lot about worry and rumination in my videos as well. But this is what I see. So people start analyzing the thoughts, try to understand the meanings of the thoughts that they have. Why am I even having this thought? Why am I thinking this way? What does that mean about my person, my personality? Um, so controlling your mind is to learn to not take those thoughts too seriously and not see them as facts just because they pop up. Just because I have a thought that I'm never going to succeed in the future, that's not the same thing as a fact. It's just a thought that popped up in my mind. And I don't have to dwell on it. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to solve it.
Mm.
So controlling my mind in this case would be to learn that it's just a thought and I don't have to worry and ruminate about it.
Right. And yeah, I mean, that's perfect. And we spend, I know I do, most people spend a lot of time in their head. Uh, and
Yeah,
and and you aren't your thoughts, but they are the essence of who you can become, I think.
that's a good point.
That's
Yeah.
so that's where ideas are born out of and stuff like that. How I know, so you're a metacognitive therapist,
Correct.
which I
Yes.
haven't really heard. I know CBT because I'm studying psychology, so that's a real popular one that's like very evidence-based and I think the go-to for like thought-based problems, right? Like that is just retraining your thought. So
Mhm.
what are some tips then if that is like the common issue, and I think you're right, is like we get stuck in our own heads and a lot of it is negative self-talk or doubt, especially as men, and like the expectations that we deal with, and maybe the thoughts of what or who we should be.
Right.
And they are thoughts, like they are the thoughts in your mind of like, I need to be providing, I need to be doing this, or whatever it is that you may be
Yeah.
stuck on, or relationship problems, she doesn't like me, I can't do this, whatever. What are
hmm
some tips then to maybe gain control over? Yeah, that rumination or the negative talk or just that process that can lead to like a bad state of mental health.
That's an excellent question. Um, to make it very, very simple, I think the first step, and we talked about this before as well, it's about becoming aware of what's going on.
Mm.
Most of us walk around thinking and ruminating and worrying on autopilot. We just notice how we feel uncomfortable. We just notice that we have all these thoughts in the back of our minds, but we're not actually aware how much time we spend worrying and ruminating about them. We're not aware that we're taking them seriously just because they pop up. So I would say the first very simple tip would be to become more aware of what's going on. And it can be as simple as just asking yourself once in a while, hey, I wonder what I'm doing right now since I'm feeling stressed or uncomfortable or insecure. What am I doing in my mind right now? Asking yourself that one question once in a while is very, very helpful in becoming more aware.
Okay.
Now, once you're more aware, you have a choice. You can decide to engage in the self-talk, engage in a conversation with yourself, with the thought, which is basically what worry and rumination is, or you can decide to postpone doing that for later. Okay, here we go. My usual you're not good enough thought popped up, or you're a loser thought, or whatever it is that we have thought popped up. And I'm not going to engage in a conversation with myself right now about this thought. I'm just going to do that later. And try to get into the habit of postponing for later. That's a very helpful tip. Have you been
Awesome.
practicing that?
And if I may add one thing also here,
Yeah.
I have been practicing it and it does work. Uh, but but there's another thing to this awareness that I think is important also to point out, and that is that we also have to be aware that, let's call it our dominant societal discourse or cultural paradigm. It tells us that we ought to analyze ourselves.
Mm,
Thinking a lot is a deep thing to do.
Yeah.
It's kind of a just common understanding. It's actually a common misconception, but it's a common understanding that it is good to engage in all these things. And at first glance, it appears to be true. Yes, why should it not be good to be analytical and reflective? Of course, it should be. But the problem is that actually the way we are reflective and thinking a lot in our daily lives is not only related to solving problems at work, for example, or
Yeah.
becoming very good at things we're interested in. When it comes to these matters, of course, it's good to think a lot.
mm,
If we study psychology, but we don't want to think or analyze, we're not going to learn anything. But we are also taught from childhood that we need to understand why we feel like this. It's very
Mm.
important to dig
Yeah.
deep and all these kind of things. And this is the misconception. And this is what metacognitive psychology teaches us. And this is a new, very revolutionary thing that unfortunately, Aaron, is actually the antithesis to CBT. But
yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
Shang
Just
perhaps
gonna
didn't
grab a
want to send.
tissue.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Yeah,
Um,
it's okay.
but we so becoming aware also means that we have to be aware that it's not a good thing to keep
Yeah.
over analyzing everything,
Mm,
even though we have been taught that it's a good thing,
yeah.
because thinking that we have to over analyze our thoughts in depth in order to find some hidden truths that should be buried on the bottom of them actually causes
Mm.
this rumination and and worry that leads to mental yeah, to feeling bad mentally and perhaps possibly even mental issues.
So true. And it's a cycle, right? Like it then
It
creates
is.
this cycle. And I think, like anything, there's a spectrum of people that are like deep overthinkers and people that are a bit maybe blasé and like ignorance is bliss type of thing. And I think if you're on the end of a deep thinker, um, you're probably more prone to the rumination and self-analysis and,
Yeah,
self-help and like growth and everything is a huge thing now. But I think you run the risk then of like over analyzing yourself,
yeah,
as you said, and it is kind of like a very modern idea to
Mhm.
really understand yourself, to grow though. Like I think it's promoted as understanding yourself to grow, but I know uh, I suffer from a bad. I'm a big overthinker, especially in regards to my feelings and stuff like that. It's something I've always kind of dealt with. So, yeah, super insightful that putting it off till later is a great technique, which I've never done and I've never heard before, and I wouldn't have even thought of. But just to
Oh,
say, no, you know what? I don't have to think about this now. I can think about it later, and you probably forget about it later, or it might not come up later. So, um,
exactly.
yeah,
if I may just add one thing, Aaron,
yeah,
before perhaps I actually can tell you how this technique works in practice. It's actually
please,
quite simple. But just you mentioned this spectrum between deep overthinkers and ignorance is bliss people. I think it's very important because this is also the intuitive understanding of that spectrum. We would
Mm,
probably, all, fathom in our minds if we have to make one. But there's actually a nuance to it that's very important to point out when we talk from this angle that we do when we come from the School of Metacognitive Psychology, and that is that problem solving and overthinking is not the same thing. But we
yeah,
intuitively think it's the same thing because we never really learned that we have to distinguish between them.
mm,
So we think that analyzing all our problems, why did I say that, or why didn't she reply my text message, or why didn't she ask a question in it? We think that that is the same as problem solving because we don't ask the question. Is problem solving and overthinking the same thing? But that's not the
mm,
same thing. Problem solving is now, when we ask the question, actually quite distinct from overthinking. Problem solving is, how do I make sure that I get her to like me, for
mm,
example? Or how do I make sure that I write a really good paper? It's not why doesn't she seem to like me, or why am I not able to understand this matter, and so on.
Why
So
do
to,
I keep messing up?
exactly, or
Mm.
whatever
Yeah.
negative things you can think or feel. So just know, being aware of that distinction actually makes it quite easy in your daily life to tell yourself, now I'm not problem solving. Now I'm just overthinking. Let me try another angle.
Good
That is
point.
a
That's
very good start.
Yeah,
such a
yeah,
good
yeah.
point. That is so true, and I've never thought of it in that way before. That so if you can put off these thoughts till later, or if you can ask yourself, am I solving the problem, or am I just thinking about it? Like, am I working this problem out, or am I just thinking about the problem? Is probably a good question to ask yourself as well. Like, is what I'm doing working towards making my life better, or am I stuck in a pattern of just thinking about why I'm
Exactly.
this
Yeah.
way?
Great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Great.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So good. Yeah,
You,
cool. And so
you
would you
could,
say, I guess in your practice,
Mhm.
Shang, um, I assume you see a variety of men and women.
I do. Actually, mostly men.
Okay,
Uh,
cool.
until recently, I have seen a lot of men rather than women in my practice.
Awesome. And without going into detail, because I know you can't, like, what would you say the main things that men are dealing with, like in recent times, the main concerns that men are kind of dealing with in regards to their mental health?
So seeing it from outside, it's anxiety and stress and depression. If you look a bit more into that, it's usually for younger men, it's usually self-worth issues and actually dating problems, being confused about what's expected of them in terms of dating in their relationships with women. Um, it's insecurities about being likable, being worthy, being not being a failure, being successful. So those kind of worries and ruminations about those topics is very common amongst especially young men.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's what I think I see as like the big issue, especially for like young men coming up, is
Hmm.
societal expectations of men and how they're defined, and then how
Hmm.
things like social media that like define those expectations. So, especially in regards to relationships and what to expect from a relationship, how to be in a relationship, and also
Yeah.
the definition around success, I think nowadays for young men. Uh,
Mm.
is like a tough thing to grasp. Like we live in a really uber capitalist kind of world now, especially online. Like it's like the wealth thing is pushed immensely. And I think as
Yeah.
as a man, that is like a big expectation or a big weight on typically men. Um,
Right.
so I don't
Yeah.
know how you guys see that and whether you think um, and how we can like if there is a possibility to like not I don't think it's like a burden. It could be a burden, but I just think it's
Mhm.
an issue. Like there's like you may have heard people talk about this young boys a report that came out of London that looked at like young men and the amount of youth crime that they have over there, the knife crime. Women are now beating men in terms of the after school vocation study, all that kind of stuff. Like now more than ever, young men aren't going on to do a trade, aren't going on to a uni course, aren't going on to work after high school. And there's a lack of like male role models in society, lack of male teachers. Men aren't wanting to get involved in community kind of clubs at the risk of looking like creeps or like, there's a lot of that stigma
Yeah.
that goes on. So I don't know. I just find, and not to be negative or like doomsday, but I think it is a tough time, especially for the next generation of like young men
Yep.
coming up, especially with the lack of like male role models. Like divorce is huge. A lot of single parents and stuff like that. So what's my question? I don't know. I guess how do you guys see that? Do you think it's an issue? And
You're the
yeah,
guy.
Janus,
yeah,
you
I think
you might have an
yeah.
idea about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very, very relevant question to ask, and I think it's also very relevant to ask it in a very open-ended way that you're doing here, because what is the question actually, right?
Mm.
It's a very, very huge, it's a huge, huge problematique, this one we're talking about here. There's many aspects to it, right? And I would say if we try to go into a way to see what could happen and what could be done about this, I would put it into two different categories. There's the political topic, the political dimension, and there's the psychological dimension, right?
Yes.
Now, it would be preferable if we could solve the political dimension, but as the words emphasizes, right, it's political. It will require a restructure. Well, first of all, the problem is related to our hyper capitalistic society, right? Where in some of the most dominant economies, we don't know so much about Australia, but in the United States and for that matter UK also, not as much in continental Europe and
Mm.
EU, but in many of the other countries here, right? It's and also South Korea and so on. We are talking about a race towards even more division between the rich and the poor, right? And that just means that an enormous amount of people, and now we're talking about men in particular, are just left to whatever to randomness, and they have so many expectations on them, and how can they even live up to them? Even the most basic one, provide for yourself.
Mm.
It's structurally it's almost impossible. Individually, everybody have a chance. Everybody can be the new TikToker or the new rapper or whatever. But when you're talking about it from a structural perspective, there will be millions that will be left with nothing, right? So this is a political topic. The other political part here is of course the societal discourse that tells men that first, like a few years ago, let's say in the 90s and zeros perhaps, it was still extremely difficult to be a man, but it was more simple in the sense that there was perhaps a more linear idea about what success was, right?
Mm.
It was related to be have somewhat financial success, at least stability, and then also have kind of an alpha attitude. And I don't mean alpha in this toxic masculinity, way that it's been defined now. Just somebody who is secure with themselves and don't, accept bullshit. I'm just trying to simplify it very much, right? And of course, there's many nuances to it, but it doesn't have to be somebody who is treating other people bad, other men, pushing them away to get through. It doesn't have to be like that. Just somebody who is not, afraid of standing up for who they are, right? That, of course, these things still apply. But now there's this other dimension where you would also have to somehow be ashamed or at least be a little bit afraid of who you are, because your heritage says that you are a male and perhaps you are also white. And if that's the case, uh, all the colonialism theories that are very prevalent in the universities and have spread to the dominant culture in many Western societies tells that you have this what I don't know if you know what the English term is, but heritage sin. So it's actually, what's the real word for it? It's the same one that was used. It is a religious term actually, right? That you are accountable for the sin of your predecessors.
Right. Okay.
So that dimension is there too. So you have to do a lot of things to compensate, to make sure that you are not in any way doing anything that is violating anybody. Of
Mm.
course, it's clear that people that are psychopaths or predators, or whatever, I mean, should be no room for them in society, right? But the thing is that many other people that are just normal, they have now another dimension that they also have to take into account. They have to make sure they don't step on anybody's toes. Meanwhile, they have to pursue all these previously defined success metrics that just becomes extremely difficult to navigate in. And I think that's also what you see, right? This additional dimension that is added to it makes it extremely hard because they're a little bit contradictory. Perhaps not
Mm.
100%, but you have to be alpha because that's also how you are attractive, no matter what people
Yeah.
say. Uh, um,
Mm.
and again, not this toxic masculinity alpha, but in having control over yourself, know what you stand for, and walk with confidence alpha. And at the same time, you have to be careful you don't do anything wrong. And oftentimes it might be a little bit blurry what actually it
Yeah.
is that is the wrong thing to do, that you have to be very careful to not, cross whatever boundary.
Could you give an example? I think this is very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. It's super, super interesting
Yeah.
point as well.
Yeah, so for example, it's very important if you want to have success with women as a man, and for that matter, and success with women also mean ultimately enhance your chance of finding real love.
Mm,
That is, that it's very important that you are able to approach women with confidence, not just approach them without confidence, because then you're going to get rejected with very, very high, probability. So you have to be able to approach them with confidence. You have to have something to offer, not something necessarily tangible, but you have to, seem to be a nice person, seem to be a confident person, somebody who
Have
is
humor,
have
have
humor,
social status.
have social
mm,
status.
Yeah.
Um, there's always individual occasions, and somebody falls in love with their first year high school partner, and they get married and live happily ever after. But for the mass majority, there's a lot of things you have to live up to.
mm,
At the same time, when you approach somebody now, it's very, very you can, first of all, it has always been tough to approach for many men, except for the few, whatever, 1 to 5% that just didn't give a shit. But now you have to be, except for the anxiety of approaching, the fear of getting the rejection and look stupid and just getting that bad stomach feeling. Now you also have to be much more afraid that you are not saying something that somehow could feel like a violation to the counterpart, even though your intention was perhaps just to sound cool, because it's very hard to sound cool if you don't feel cool right away. And for the
mm.
95, or however many percent of men that is, this becomes another dimension to an already extremely complex situation. And everybody would like to be, be the Brad Pitt that could just walk down the street and everybody think you are the most awesome person in the world. But there is a reason why Brad Pitt is Brad Pitt. That's because he's unique.
Mm.
So in your endeavor to try to be special in a positive way, which is already really, really difficult. Now you have to be also anxious about, am I actually portraying the opposite? And now I'm
Mm.
suddenly not just being rejected and feeling bad. Now I might get canceled or something like that, or getting a reputation for being a creep,
Yeah.
even though I was just trying to do something that I thought would enhance my chances of getting
Mm.
being successful. And I'm obviously not talking about somebody, touching on other people
Yeah.
inappropriate. So I'm talking about somebody telling a joke that is misconceived, or that is
Yeah.
badly designed because you were nervous when you picked it, and you didn't really know the social code so well, because it's difficult to be a young person,
Mm.
both men and women, and but now we're just talking about men. So all these kind of problematics here, I think, are just becoming more complex, and you are not if you don't have the right foundation and have a natural flair for these things, you are in a tough position.
Yeah.
Very
And
good point.
so,
Yeah.
super good point. And I guess like coming out of the Me Too era, that was like a massive thing. So it's kind of like the
Yeah.
back end of that. But also, online dating now probably makes it tough because you have the option of just doing it from your couch, or that there is now access to the interaction without having to do the interaction in person. And maybe from a psychologist point of view, you're not exposing yourself to that anxiety and getting over the fear to be able to become confident and train your brain and all those pathways to actually be confident in the situation where you can do it from like your phone. You're not actually experiencing the heart palpitations, the sweat, the stuff that you need to kind of get over to become competent at maybe doing that. Um, and also, there's a lot of stats around like how there's the top 20% of men are the most eligible people that women are now looking for. And that probably comes from these different societal expectations of how much you earn, your position in society, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's like I think it's a super complex time for guys in general, really. Like and not just dating. I think it all plays into each other because you want to become this successful person that is capable and that has a partner and stuff like that. And so managing all this stuff, especially for a young man coming up in
Mhm.
today's society, is probably hard. So I guess, Shane, in regards to that, what are some tips for maybe like relationship wise? If
Mhm.
you want to talk about it, or if you can talk about it from the female's perspective, for like a guy that might have, I don't know, even just worries about it and approaching like because I think everyone wants to find love. Everyone's what most people do anyway, want to be in a relationship. It's like you want a
Yeah,
partner. Um,
yeah,
so
yeah.
if like
Mhm.
you're a guy that maybe is struggling with that from a
Mhm.
psychologist point of view, like what's a good way of approaching it?
Okay, so the first step would be to, again, going back to overthinking, how much time do you actually spend beating yourself up or thinking about your insecurities, your shortcomings, or how, and worry about how approaching women are difficult. So if you're doing that sort of stuff, that sort of thinking, the first step would be to deal with that, to postpone that, to reduce that, and regain control over this process. So regain control over your mind and rediscovering that you can always stop engaging with those thoughts. That's the first and most important step. Because if you've been worrying for 5 hours before going on a date or before going out and talking to girls, and you've been worrying and beating yourself up and thinking about all your insecurities, you're bound to feel uncomfortable when you are in the situation. Your brain remembers that this was a difficult and dangerous situation, so you're going to react with anxiety once you're there. Now, it's okay. We all feel nervous when we approach someone where there's something at stake. That's okay. But if we've been beating ourselves up and worrying and ruminating for hours and days, that's going to decrease our chances for being ourselves and being comfortable and being able to engage in a conversation and connect with someone. So first step, reduce the worry and rumination, the time you spend beating yourself up. What was my second? The second would actually be just to do it a lot.
Hmm.
So just go on a lot of dates and practice being present, using your attention to just focus on what the other person says rather than beating yourself up or worrying in the background. That would be my second tip. Just do it many, 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 many times and practice not worrying before, during, and after.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think just to
Yeah.
put a theoretical, lens to this also, this is also, stop overthinking and start problem solving.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
The first
Yeah.
exactly.
one
Exactly.
is
Awesome.
to stop overthinking, and the second one is start problem solving. If I may add one also, and I think that helps a lot. Find some friends, hopefully you have them already, that like to go out, so you
Yeah.
can do it together with your friends. Go out
Hmm.
and socialize together with your friends. Doesn't have to be a thing you can do alone. Now it happens to be a thing you can also do alone now, because now there's social media, there is Tinder and all these kind of things. Whereas previously it was probably harder to do it alone. So you have both options now. But finding some like-minded friends that it can actually both be male and female friends for that matter. So you can be outgoing in whatever way you feel comfortable with. I think that would help, because I think one of many dimensions to this problems is also that many guys tend to isolate themselves behind
Hmm.
the screen. That's the only place where you can feel very safe and so on. And stop doing that. Uh, Stop. You can still be behind
Oh,
your screen when you're doing useful stuff, even if you like to, play some computer or have fun with that, or you want to, do work and so on. But go out and be out in the world, because
Mhm.
that's where life actually is.
Yep. Yep.
super important. And I think we do like out of COVID, there's a big, I think there was like a loneliness epidemic. Like
Mhm.
not just men, but women were getting stuck inside, um, isolating, and then kind of struggling to get out of that after COVID because people become comfortable. You're
Yeah.
not retraining your brain to get out there. You're in your little bubble, and it's super. I think in terms of mental health, that's the worst thing you could do. If I was to think of one, like isolating and shutting yourself off from the world is super
Yeah.
harmful to your mental state.
Exactly. Exactly.
I've been prone to doing it in the past, and I know people that are kind of defaulted to a certain way of thinking, kind of do it as a coping mechanism. I think because it's less stimulus, it's less stuff to
Yeah.
deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like
I
yeah,
We can explain it from I mean the
it's
theoretical,
it's avoidance.
So what happens is, right, and you can correct me because you're the real expert in this, right? So you are already a little bit socially anxious from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
For whatever reason,
yeah,
and we don't want to get into that right now, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Then you will have a tendency to more often decide to avoid social situations. What are you alone with when you are alone then? Then you're alone with your thoughts. If you have not
mm,
learned to not ruminate, then you will start ruminating more. And then you will feel worse and worse, and then you will start to avoid more and more social
Yeah,
situations, and so
become a
the broken
cycle.
circle goes. So it's actually quite simple to explain here. So the first thing you need to know in order to break that is also to be aware that, hey, the problem is not something inherently in me. My mind is not broken. There's not, for my particular brain, a defect somewhere. No, it's overthinking that's the problem.
Mm.
And then, what we talked about earlier on, right? There's certain points to this, right? Reasons for this, right? We have learned it altogether, and we have never learned that we can actually just stop overthinking. At least we can learn to stop overthinking. So the first step to get out of the room is also to understand this fundamental problematic, that it's overthinking, that is the fundamental issue here. Of
Mm.
course, there's a few people that are then schizophrenic and so on, and it's different for them. But for
Yeah.
the vast majority of people, this is the case.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah. And that overthinking is paralysis in a lot of situations for people. It is the like the stop sign to you even
Yeah,
achieving a lot of things, I think, in most cases for people. Like it's the fear of what if comes from overthinking. It is like the rumination.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
whereas
It's
I
like
think highly
being,
highly
yep.
successful people just don't have that. I think they're just able to um, yeah, either really good problem solvers or they don't even have the thought of what if it goes wrong. It's just like, no, I'm just going to do it anyway.
yeah.
Um,
I
yeah.
think there's been studies, I'm not sure, I haven't checked them myself, but I've heard from others, but there's been studies showing that very highly successful people are actually incredibly insecure and
Mm,
probably have overthinking, but I think they've learned to refocus away from that and, as you say, are good at
okay.
problem solving. I think
Right.
that's
You can learn to use it as fuel
yeah, yeah, exactly.
because you are
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
afraid of being a loser or whatever way you want to define that. Then you just
Mm,
work your ass off all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Then
okay.
you can ask yourself if that is really success, right? Is it success to look glamorous
Yes.
from the outside, but you feel very bad at the inside? I would say that this is not a success at all.
No.
Is it
Yeah.
better than feeling the same and being homeless? Yes, but it's still a very, very bad life, actually. But if you can both be successful and you can also learn to overcome your overthinking, so you will not feel bad. Meanwhile, you actually have materially a successful life.
Or
Then,
you're working toward that.
yeah, you work.
You're
Yeah,
on the path.
you just have to be on
Yeah.
the path. You don't
Yeah.
have. There is no quick fix, and there should never be a desire for solving all the problems in an instant. It should always just be working towards it, right? And seeing
Good point.
small improvements.
Good point.
Yeah.
I think that's important also to remind everybody and
But
ourselves about.
but
Yeah.
to get good at relationships and approaching, I think basically comes down to learning to control your mind and getting out and practicing. That's basically what it's come
Yeah.
down to.
Yeah.
And controlling does not mean controlling in the original sense. It means to learn to not, follow along with your trigger thoughts
Yep.
that and then start overthinking.
Yep.
Because we can always misunderstand control, that I need to always know where my mind goes and so on. That's
Mm,
not something that
Good point.
can or
An
should
important point.
be desired, be the ambition.
yeah. So other than like putting your thoughts off till later, are things like is like journaling a good way of um
Hmm.
I don't know,
Yeah.
getting some of it out, like clearing the clutter in your mind a little bit, maybe. Is that like something you suggest? Like, what are some other things that people, men, particularly, I know men probably wouldn't want to hear that journaling is a good thing to do. Like it, I don't know, it's just like it just
Please
comes
no.
like it's like a dear diary kind of thing. But I personally, when I've done it in the past, I don't do it at the moment. When I've done it in the past, I have found that if I start my day that way, it does help me. But are there other tips you could give guys like? Uh, to, to help with like the overthinking, other than putting your thoughts off?
Right. I think journaling, just to say a couple of words about that, it depends on your goal. Is
Mm,
your goal to control thoughts? Because if you feel that you journal, then you stop the overthinking. Maybe that's not the best method in the long term because you remind yourself that you need to do something in order to control your mind. You're
yeah.
relying on something external. So in that case, it would be better just to practice postponing for later. No need to journal. If your goal, however, is to get to know yourself better, or there's certain things you need to reflect on in your worry time, or at some point on Sundays, or whatever it is, in the mornings, then I think that's a good idea to write down your thoughts, just see, okay, what am I thinking? What are some of the things that are important for me? What are some of my pitfalls? I rely on that sometimes when I need to reflect about something. I like to journal. I like to write it down.
Okay.
But I don't use that as a way to control my thoughts. I use that as a way to become aware of certain things.
So it's
So
just
Um,
in
good
other
for
words,
awareness.
problem solving and
Problem
not overthinking.
solving.
So you can
Yeah,
use a journal
yeah.
for problem
Mm.
solving. And now that if people are aware of this, let's call it theoretical distinction between overthinking and problem solving, then it might be useful because then
Yeah.
you don't use it for the wrong purpose because you don't know the difference between them.
Mm, mm,
Mm.
Because the thing is, the point is, right, that when you are writing things down in your journal, if you're writing things down about how bad you feel and so on, then it actually is a way of overthinking,
Yeah.
and close to. So it's important to be aware that it can actually have that effect.
yeah. Oh my
Yes.
God, everything's horrible. No one likes me. The loser.
Yeah,
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 you're reinforcing the like
yeah.
negative
Yeah.
aspects of your mind. Yeah, yeah. It just
Yeah.
seems like such a simple fix to such a what can feel like such a complex situation for people. Like just
I
to
know.
reframe what you're doing as overthinking rather than problem solving.
Mhm.
It does seem so simple. Um, yeah.
It it does, and some people might get offended,
Mm,
especially if they rely on overthinking as something. If they rely on overthinking a lot and they see that as a part of their personality,
yeah.
they might get offended of being presented with this solution. Oh my God, you can't just reduce me and everything
Yeah.
that's going on to overthinking. That's
Yes.
insulting. And I've had clients who decided to terminate therapy because that was too simple a solution.
Mm,
So it's just we do understand that there's a lot more things going on and the problem is complex.
yeah.
But in terms of what we can control, that can make a huge impact, it would be to control our mind and reduce overthinking.
Mm,
There might be a lot of problems still. It doesn't solve our financial problems to reduce overthinking. It doesn't solve necessarily our
Okay.
professional
Let's
problems.
come with a good example. Let's try to come with an example because it's a very interesting part of the discussion. Because let's say you have a real problem. Let's say you get diagnosed with cancer.
Mm,
mm,
Nobody can take that away from you, and obviously, cancer doesn't go away if you stop overthinking.
mm.
But whether or not you will, and let's also say that it's hard. If we talk about, oh, if you fight a lot, it will enhance chances of surviving and so on. This is with speculation for somebody like us, right?
Mm.
There would be real doctors that probably could say that better. But what we can say is that if you overthink a lot, your life will be miserable from the
Mm.
time you are diagnosed with cancer until the time you die from it or you get cured from it. Your life will be miserable,
Yeah.
100% miserable. But if you learn to reduce overthinking, your life will actually, unless your physical pain becomes unbearable, will
Mm.
become reasonably because you do not dwell about
Yeah.
how bad situation you are in all along,
You can still
and
have a meaningful life
you can have a very
without the
meaningful life. Yeah,
unnecessary suffering
yeah,
while
Mm.
you're going through
yeah,
this difficult time in your life.
yeah.
So
Mm.
And perhaps
mhm.
you should just explain a little bit more concrete what worry postponement actually, how it's done, because
Yeah.
it's actually a very simple exercise.
Mm.
Also because it's not just, but I just postpone it and then like this it gets postponed. But it's almost like that actually. I mean, what you do is that you
It is simple.
it
It's
is
set a,
actually
set a
to try
time.
it's almost offensively simple, but it actually works. And
Yeah.
like with everything, practice helps, right? But the worry postponement is to say, I decide a worry time from 7 p.m. to 7:20 p.m. Every day for the week. And then whenever you get a trigger thought, and these things come in all the time, you get thoughts
Yeah.
all the time. Oh, how nice weather it is today. Oh, there was a spider there. But that's something you get in Australia, not in Denmark. I've
Big
heard.
ones as well.
Yeah, and should I buy milk or should I buy juice? And then, oh, I'm not looking terrible today, or whatever negative thoughts. The negative thoughts are the trigger thoughts, right?
I'm going to be
Yeah,
rejected. My
yeah,
date hasn't replied to my text.
yeah. Am I going to fail at this presentation?
Mm,
So whenever you get these trigger thoughts, and then because you then you know that, oh, then you start worrying about them. Then I say, oh, I have my worry time at 7 p.m. I postpone to
Mm.
them. When you have that worry time, it's surprising how much easier it is to not just keep ruminating and worrying about the thoughts on autopilot.
Mm.
I'm not saying it's going to be 100% eliminated, but it's going to be reduced significantly just by having that. And then when you practice, it will be reduced more and more. And then when you arrive at your worry time, um,
Everything just
it,
hits you like a ton of bricks. I'm sure.
actually it
Actually,
doesn't. This is what doesn't happen. Most of the things you will not remember most of the things. Don't
Of
write them
course.
down. Don't write them down in the
Okay.
journal. Don't write these things down because
yeah.
the thing is that if there's something important, you will still remember it. And if
Yes.
and 80% of the things
That's
will have
what I
disappeared.
explain my clients. I tell them that, 80% of the stuff that was going around in your mind will actually be self-regulated. This is what the mind does. This is
Yeah.
the reason why you don't remember all the thousands of thoughts that went through your mind yesterday.
Yeah.
That's why you don't always remember all the negative things that have happened in your life, but sometimes they come to your mind. That
Mm,
is because the mind can self-regulate. It can take care of these thoughts itself. So 80% of the stuff that was bothering you at 10 a.m. will probably be gone by 7 p.m. when you get to your worry time. And the
mm,
20% that's left, you have a much better perspective now, and maybe your creativity has kicked in and you can come up with better solutions if there are any. So
Yeah.
so what's been your experience with postponing worry? Because you learned this from me, right?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
got to
I've
know
learned
each
all
other.
these things from Shang initially, right? But then we
It
decided
helps
to.
when you live with a specialist, huh?
Yeah, but it's,
He's my
I'm
experiment.
the experiment. It's going
The
reasonably well. Yeah.
cash
So
dough.
so so no. So I'd say that for all of these small problems that occur, you start sometimes, remembering bad events in the past, and then you start to play small movies in your head and so on. These all just disappear when you have this, at least for my case. But again, you should never take one person individual case as kind of, representative for everybody. But I would say all these minor things,
Mm.
they just vanish.
The neuroses.
Yeah. These things that are just also stupid, right? Oh, am I having a bad hair day, and whatever.
Why did she say that?
Yeah, we're
Why did
playing a
she
past event or something. These days just disappear. Then there are a little bit like bigger things if you something has been bothering for a while, right? Perhaps you
Mm,
feel that you are whatever at work there's an immense pressure has been there for a long time because of a very unreasonable deadline and so on. These things they will be diminished, but they don't necessarily disappear altogether because you get re-triggered from these things.
mm.
But it still helps, all right? And
Mm.
then there's other ways to deal with them, and perhaps Jan can
Yeah, coming
today.
back to your question
Yeah,
about what else men can do.
yeah,
I think the second thing is to learn that you have control over your attention.
Mm,
So I forgot this, but a lot of my clients also deal with issues with being productive and being able to concentrate on what's important rather than getting distracted. And a good way of dealing with that is noticing how you have control over your attention and you don't have to follow every stimuli that shows up. When a thought pops up and it's very tempting to go in and think about that and get distracted, or a notification pops up on your phone and you want to follow that, you actually have control over your attention and you can just redirect it to whatever thing you were doing, whether it was just being with your child and playing, whether it was just watching a TV show and relaxing, or whether you were writing a work email or working on something important. So rediscovering that you have a lot of control over your attention, regardless of what's going on internally and what's going on externally, is also incredibly helpful. So
mm.
it's all about rediscovering control over your mind.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Super important. And we do live in an age now of like attention capture where it's like you just got
Sure.
so much, especially if you spend a lot of time on your phone, which most of us
Yes.
like it's
Yes.
hijacked. Your attention is hijacked. So um
Yep.
and I'm sure that plays into like your ability to think clearly and manage your thoughts as well while you're trying to manage what is
Yeah.
often useless stimulus that you're just like scrolling through on your phone if you're not managing
Exactly.
it. It's just,
Yeah.
I'm sure adding more cognitive, like taking away from your cognitive bandwidth to be able to deal with your own shit. Um,
Yep.
so, so you suggest like having a time, like say 7 to 7:30 or whatever it is, 7 to 7:20, and whenever like some rumination starts or whenever these thoughts come, just go like, oh, I'll worry about that at 7 o'clock when I start doing my working time. It's like that simple to go, okay, I'm having these thoughts. I'm just going to put them aside and marking a time slot of the day to be able to maybe deal with them. And as you said, that most likely half the shit you think about will disappear when you get to that time
That's
period.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
But
That's such a good tip. And
yeah,
I've never heard that before. And I think, although I agree with you, some people would probably be um, offended a little bit that you can diminish all your worries down into this little idea of like putting them aside. But when we're talking about quality of life and your mental health, that is
that's it.
what are we dealing with if we are not dealing with our thoughts internally? Externally, yes, there's everything else that's going on. But for your own internal well-being, that is mentally it. Your thoughts are your existence internally.
Yeah.
Yep,
Um,
yep. Exactly,
so
exactly.
yeah, it makes sense to manage them like you would manage anything else.
Yep, yep. Or not manage, actually. That's basically what we're doing, right? We're trying not to do much.
Sorry,
Uh,
yeah,
which
not
is
manage
great.
them,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh,
But
But
you're right, you're right.
managed by not managing. Yeah.
I just
yes,
got
yeah, yeah.
And
yeah,
I
too
think
detailed.
it's I think there should be also like was also back to this societal problematic that many of these things stem from also, right? We should also reconsider what the definition of being a deep person is, for example, because there's
Okay.
something many of us would like to be. Well, some don't, but many would like to be, right?
Mm,
What does it mean to be a good person also perhaps, but let's take like the deep person. The deep person is not necessarily somebody who reflects very deeply or heavily on everything. um, it's, for example, somebody who defines, perhaps through a lot of work, problem solving work, what are my values, what
mm,
is it that I believe is the good life, but also the way that I can be a good person. And then do as much as you can in your everyday, endeavor to be successful, to pursue these values.
mm,
Perhaps, and talking about redefinition, perhaps that could also be a redefinition of success. Well, there is a kind of notion, and I don't know where it came from, because John Lennon says it differently, but that success is the same as a good job. I mean, that seems to be
mm.
the common understanding of what success means. And some other people perhaps say have a lot of money.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
John Lennon defines it as love, and that's the meaning of success. But regardless, perhaps
Mm.
it can be figuring out what your values are, and if your values are not incredibly distorted, like I'm talking about racist values or something like that,
Yep.
probably these values are reasonable. Those that you are deciding,
What
and
could be an example?
well, that could be that I would like to be good at certain things.
Yeah.
I would like to have a high drive to
Mm,
pursue whatever my goals are, because my goals and the values are not the same thing. My goals can be to become a very good psychologist, for
yep.
example. And my value is that I'll be driven towards my goals. Another value could be that you are very, kind to people,
Mm,
that you will help your neighbor.
mm.
And I'm not talking about neighbor in a concrete sense. I'm talking about people around you.
Community. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it can also be religious values if you are if you're religious.
Like spiritual.
Yeah,
Mm,
spiritual. Something I mean, for me, for example, values are to be steadfast and to be genuine,
mm,
and I'm trying to pursue them in my daily endeavors. Um, Perhaps that is more, at least that's a suggestion to something that could be more deep than
mm,
thinking a lot about things.
Mm,
And
mm.
I have been doing that a lot in my life also. But but one doesn't leave out the other. But you can learn to perhaps take that bundle out that is actually just,
Not doing you any
not
good.
doing
Yeah,
any good,
yeah, yeah,
instead just keeping you in a pit.
yeah.
yeah. Super important, I think, to define, yeah, what your idea of success is, maybe what your
Yeah,
values are in terms of like achieving that in regards to that. Um, because I think it's very easy to be to feel the weight of what society thinks maybe success is especially for young guys that are coming up. So, yeah, I think that is such a good tip and good insight into how you can become successful and what that means to you. Um,
Mm,
yeah, in life in general. And I love the John Lennon
mm.
quote.
yeah. Yeah, there's some wise people that it's good to listen to. They are all from the 60s, 70s, 80s. I don't know whether there's not too
From the
many anymore,
golden era.
but
So true.
They start
How,
ruminating.
yeah.
what's the time?
I
How much longer
think
have you guys got?
what time is it
Time
now?
now.
If you just scroll up, yeah, it's 11 now.
Oh, we have
When will they
perhaps
come back?
perhaps 10 minutes or something
10
like that.
minutes.
Okay, cool. What else did I want to ask you? So how do you find these like two I don't I guess you probably like philosophy and psychology, two different ways of like looking at the world maybe or looking at things and thinking about things. Um, maybe, I don't know, maybe or maybe not. Um,
Probably. Yeah.
Probably like one's more scientific, right? Like psychology is like science-based, maybe looking at like the how things happen, and philosophy is like the why, right? Kind of like why things are.
Yeah. Yeah, and what are things? What do we
Yeah,
mean with this? How do we define X? How do we define
Mm.
Y? How do we
How do we
define
define
Z?
success? How
Yeah.
do we define
yeah.
happiness?
Do you find in your relationship like it's a good mix of like, do you think in those ways? Like does that help balance each other out a little bit?
I actually think it does.
I think so too.
I
Totally
actually,
complement each
I
other.
think in this regard it does,
Yeah.
because so philosophy is, of course, it's many things, like psychology is many things, but fundamentally, philosophy is extremely logical. It's
Mm,
about always logically be able to defend whatever your stance is.
Uh-huh.
And and what I like, what I'm extremely impressed about with metacognitive psychology or metacognitive therapy is that it is extremely logically coherent. And that's what I, as a philosopher, will always be skeptical towards. Whatever thing I'm hearing about, if I see logical inconsistencies in it, I will point them out, and I will try to, deconstruct whatever it is.
And you've had a lot of questions for me,
And I've had a
a
lot of
lot of
questions for
discussions
you,
about
for
OCD.
Shang,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's really coherent, and it's a
mm.
really strong foundation it stands upon, and that also drags me very much into metacognitive psychology and makes me find it extremely interesting. So in that regard, there are surprisingly few clashes between us.
Awesome.
That's perhaps not as interesting as if we were disagreeing a lot, but it
Yeah, we
just
don't.
so
Well,
happens
No,
to
no.
be the case.
We just agree on this on these things, yeah.
Yeah.
On these things.
um,
Yeah.
so if people were to get into metacognitive therapy, how like is it over a few sessions? How does it work? How many sessions are involved and like what's the process like?
So it depends on your problem. But if you're suffering from anxiety or depression or OCD or stress, um, I think you will notice improvements in about 3 to 6, 8 sessions.
Oh, wow.
So for someone who's suffering from generalized anxiety disorder, it's recommended to do 10 sessions.
Mhm.
But in my experience, if my clients practice the things we talk about in between our sessions, they notice improvements very, very quickly. I've
Mm.
even had the past month, I've had a couple of clients who noticed improvements in one session. They came back the next time, they were like, "I'm fine, I'm good, I'm great. I just leave all my thoughts alone." Of course, it's not a miracle cure and it doesn't
Yeah,
happen to everyone. But I would say in about 10 sessions, you will have the strategies you need to be able to control your mind and do that in the future as well.
that's awesome. And I'll
Mhm.
make sure that I put like some info and stuff in there. Um,
Thank-
because I'm super interested in trying it out as well to put the
Yeah,
I'm an
yeah,
overthinker, so I'm definitely from now on going to set my alarm for the evening and
yeah. You're gonna try that?
do my worrying with dinner maybe at night time. Um, but yeah, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it, especially being the time difference and stuff like that. And it's I don't know, hopefully I can chat to you guys again sometime about there's heaps to talk about. I mean, there's we're scratching the surface when it comes to mental health and like how men exist in society and how we can be better people and better um, better off. And you two provide some great insights, and it's cool to have like both of you together, with the like different ways of looking at things that kind of work though. It works. It's like, yeah, you're both on the same page. So it's great. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, Aaron. It's so interesting what you're doing. I think it's an important topic to dive more into, and as you heard, we had a lot to say about
No,
that.
no, this is extremely
It's
interesting.
so
Yeah, yeah,
important, so
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
So thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's very important that people are taking this topic that you are also, that
Yeah.
you are that you are deciding to take upon yourself, Aaron, to, to to take it very seriously because it has been neglected for a while,
Mhm.
perhaps with good reason, for well, at least to some extent, right? That
Mm.
there was a need to refocus on some of the grim things that happen to many women. But there has been for now for whatever 10 years or something, also been kind of a in the common discourse, at least in many Western countries, a neglect of the people that many men are to a large extent left with. For example, you talked about suicidal rates and so on. Also, you can also say how long do people live and so on. These are some of the most important statistics. And homelessness, youth homelessness, education. I mean, these are some of the most important statistics you can probably point out in all of our societies. These are important to discuss. And the aim for any society, in my opinion at least, to be to get as many people as possible, regardless of the skin color, their religious, sexual orientation, or gender, to have a good life. So when some groups are, for whatever reason, left behind in some important area, it's important to discuss that and figure out why, so we can change it. And I think that
Mhm.
you're trying to do
Okay.
that, and I think that's very important.
We really
Yeah.
appreciate that. Support
Yeah.
you.
I don't know much. I've just started studying, but I think it's just come from exactly what you said. Like there's a need to and it's come from like just extreme rates of men taking their own lives, which just seems like something we should be doing something about and more about, like not just talking a little bit about it. There should be a push to really emphasize that it's
Yeah.
just not yeah, it's yeah, I don't know. I just find that talking about it is a start anyway. And there's probably a lot smarter people than me and even you guys that like should be
Yeah.
worrying about this. But I really appreciate, yeah, you doing it with me. And yeah, I hope we can talk again soon
Yeah.
because it was awesome.
It'll be a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
guys, and good luck with the newborn.
Thank you.
Thank